This lesson I've been thinking for quite a while. It came from a song that just was released by Hillsong United, and had a lot of meaning to it. And one of the things that it said in it is saying, "Seeing the world Shaddai's way." You know, recently we've got a lot of sad or challenging news. Many of our loved ones here this morning are going through some tough times. You know, as the announcements that were made this morning, many were called in for a report on their biopsies, some good, some bad. Others are having heart issues, palpitations, family challenges, dealing with parents that are in their health and decline, losing loved ones within the past several years. This life can be filled with so much pain and heartache. And how can we handle it as human beings? How can we handle it as man on this earth? You know, as a teacher, as just a normal guy up here, I don't have all the answers. You know, a lot of times when we sit in the audience and we look at evangelists, we look at teachers giving sermons, we think that they have all the answers, the secrets to life, but we don't. I promise you that. But there's one person that does. So hopefully the study that we have this morning will help open our eyes and show us where the answer lies. And to be able to see life through God's eyes. You know, how wonderful would that be? To be able to face any challenges through His perspective. To be able to see our highs and our lows. And to be able to respond to them instead of react. You know, many times in the past when challenges come through, trials, temptations, heartaches, I react. I have a knee-jerk reaction emotionally. Instead of taking time and just breathing and responding to those challenges. By seeing through His eyes, we hope to be able to allow the Holy Spirit to quiet our emotional storm and to guide us calmly through them. That's the key. So the question is, how many of us want this in our life? I do. Especially the coming changes. So another question is, why aren't we accessing this gift? Why do we continue to allow the world and the accuser to rob us of it? You know, God gave us not the power of fear. Okay? He gave us, the spirit of fear. He didn't give us the spirit of fear, but rather He gave us power, He gave us love and control. 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7. See, if we allow those thoughts to fill our minds, it will give us peace. But if we take our eyes off of God and allow the accuser to take it away from us, then we will not be successful in this life in dealing with our trials and tribulations. So I'm going to try to go through these stories quickly. But we're going to look at 3 different stories as how and why we don't access this gift that God gave us. Of power, of love, of controlling or managing our fears and our trials. And then finally we're going to look at one story of how it's done properly. The first 3 stories will be dealing with our man's view, what we see, how we deal with the challenges from our perspective. And it'll show us how successful it can be, or a lack of success. So you would turn with me to Exodus chapter 14, verses 18 to 12. All the stories that we will read, you're all familiar with. There's nothing new. But hopefully it will remind us of how to avoid the same mistakes. As we know, the story of the children of Israel, how they cried to God and when they were in bondage, and God heard their cry, sent Moses to free them and deliver them from their captivity. So you would turn to look at verse 10. You know, as they were delivered and were journeying into the promised land, you know, that first arrow, if they had gone straight, it would have gotten them there a lot quicker. But in their eyes, they would ask, why did God change my route and had them go through Sinai, the peninsula? It says here in verse 10, when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly, and the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. They were just free on their way to the promised land. And the first obstacle that they hit, this is how they responded. They saw, from their point of view, this mass army approaching. See, when they were heading to Canaan, I'm not sure which is that, east, west, north, God said, I want you to turn back, and I want you to go and camp near Migdol, between Migdol and the sea. And I want you to look towards Beer-Sheva. That is a point across from the Red Sea. So if you look at this map, at the point of the Sinai Peninsula, they're surrounded by the Red Sea and mountains. So to them, they were trapped. It's like, what did you get us into? Why are we here? There's no way out. You know, it took them 24 days to reach this point. And when God hardened the Egyptian's heart, and then the Pharaoh woke up and realized what he had done, he freed all these people that had worked for him, all their workers. He decided, hey, you know what? I want them back. So he gathered all his army, 600 chariots, and it took him 8 days to reach the children of Israel. So the Israelites were here 8 days, seeing mountains and sea and no way out. And then finally they see the Egyptian army approaching. And then they cry out. Their hearts filled with great fear as this large army was advancing towards them. They felt trapped and had no plans of escape. No way out. You know, instead of praying to God for help, what did they do? They only wish for death. Why, oh why, they moaned to Moses, did you bring us out here? Wasn't there enough graves in Egypt for you to bury us there instead of bringing us out to the wilderness and for us to die? You know, we told you, leave us in Egypt. Let us serve the Egyptians. At least we live there. We'll be able to live. So how often have we done this as we go through our life? And we encounter obstacles, encounter situations that it seems to trap us, to bear down upon us. You know, asking God, why did you put me in this position? Moaning and complaining about our troubles. I've done it many times. But when we approach it this way, when we see it through our eyes, our pains and our suffering will just get worse and more severe as we can view these trials from our point of view. And we will be like the Egyptians. We will eventually wish for death as they did. Our past will destroy us without God's help. So as we move to Numbers chapter 11, verses 4 through 7, as they are now in the wilderness, at the Mount of Sinai. It's been 44 days since their salvation. And they just continue not to learn. They grumble and complain about this situation, their miseries, and they see how, when they respond in this manner, how God deals with it. But they are so blinded by what they want, they don't see the light. It says here, now the ramble that was among them had a strong craving. And the people of Israel also wept again and said, "Oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there's nothing at all but this manna to look at." Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium. How sad that they had to eat the food from heaven all these days. As they were encamped by the Mount of Sinai, they've been there for about 7 days, waiting on Moses to come down from the mount, speaking with God. And it says the ramble, or in essence, a disorderly crowd, have this strong craving for the past. And through their eyes, they don't see that God has been providing for them, feeding them with food from heaven, which nourished them every day. The only thing that they had to do was just to go out and gather it. God would rain it down, and it would collect, and they would just gather it enough to feed their family. They complain about what it looked like. Well, when I was researching it, it may not have been the best thing to look at. Brown in color, and it was shaped like that of a cilantro seed, but it kept them filled. See, they didn't see that, did they? All they saw was what they were missing, what they left behind. They had that craving, strong desire for their past. As this food, they described this bread from heaven as wafers made of honey. And when I was reading that, maybe it's like graham crackers. I could eat graham crackers all the time. But just think, eating it for days in and days out. As human beings, we like variety from our perspective. But if we had food that sustained us and we never go hungry and it satisfies, why would we turn away from this? Because of our human desires. They miss the pleasure of the past. The color and the taste of the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic, and of course the fish. Oh, they had to have meat. They couldn't live without meat. Sometimes I think that I can't live without meat for my meals. See, all this food that they were wanting and desiring left them wanting more. They were willing to give up the freedom that God just gave them. Just deliver them. Crossing the Red Sea. They were willing to give this up to enjoy their past pleasures and to be under bondage once again. You know, how many times have we desired the past? We're not content with what God has given us today. How many times do we complain about our current conditions? You know, and not realize what He's done for us, how He's nourished us, how He's taken care of us. You know, after being saved, we groan about our predicaments and wish for the good old days. Oh, the good old days without air conditioning. Were those good old days? You know, working or just being outdoors the last few days, I don't wish for the old days. But as human beings, we tend to forget that those good old days came with some consequences. You know, we think that it was all right and good, but all of it was under bondage and darkness. That's the good old days. The present will be unsatisfying without God. We just have to open our eyes. And I'll find the third story of what happens when we look at life through our eyes, the consequences of it. So now, the Israelites are marching towards the Promised Land. They're right at the entrance. God selects, or have them select, several men to go into the land of Canaan, to the land of promise, to search it out, to come back and give a report of what's in that land. So in verse 23 it says, "And they came to the valley of Eshcol, and cut down from there a branch with a single cluster of grapes. And they carried it on a pole between two of them. They also brought some pomegranates and figs." That this place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster that the people of Israel cut down from there. Can you imagine that? The size of the fruits, the plenty of the land that will provide for nourishing their life. So after 40 days of spying on the land, they return. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together so that they would be able to give a report. In verse 27 and 28, listen to what they says. "And they told him, 'We came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruits. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along Jordan.'" Verse 31, it says, "Then the men who had gone up with him said, 'We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are.' So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, 'The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilims, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seem to them.'" In Numbers 14, 1 through 3, it says here, "Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, 'Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness? Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?'" Don't you feel sorry for them? God has delivered them through the Egyptians, saved them through the water of the Red Sea, destroyed their enemies, brought them to this land of plenty, as they reported, no matter how briefly. They acknowledge the good of the land, the big fruit, the grapes, the pomegranates, and the figs. They said they would flow with milk and honey. They share the good news, but it came with a big however. When they said however, it distracted the people, didn't it? They took their eyes off the blessing that God is giving them, or had given them. Do we catch ourselves doing the same thing? All the blessing that God has given in this life, once something bad comes, our eyes just moves from that and just focuses on that bad situation. They have been freed, delivered from their bondage, provided on their journey, and now given a new life in a land flowing with milk and honey. Giants? Really? Yeah, they may have been 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall. They may have looked like grasshoppers in their eyes, but isn't their God bigger than those giants and bigger than the stone walls that they saw in the land? Isn't God bigger than our problems that we face? Fear overcame them when they took their eyes off of God and saw it through their perspective. Fear consumed them when they could not see from God's vantage point. And same will happen to us when we don't see through God's eyes, when we see it through our eyes only. The small problems to us will be magnified. The cancers that we face, the deaths that we deal with, the pains that our loved ones are dealing with, those will be magnified, will consume us, overcome us, to the point that we will be the same. God, why did you bring us to this point to not kill us? Wouldn't it be better if we just lived in the past and die there? The sad thing is, when we allow these troubles to consume us, allow our fears to overcome us, it not only hurts us, it hurts our loved ones. See, when these individuals gave these bad reports and their family grumbled and cried through the night, moaning and complaining about this situation, those that were 20 years old and above died in the wilderness and never saw the promised land. And those that gave the bad news died of the plagues immediately before God. But the ones that were 20 years and under, and the ones that were loyal to God, they suffered too. They had to wander in that wilderness for 40 years to let these rebellious individuals die. They missed out on that land that were right there in front of them. How many times have we let the stress of this situation get the better of us and our family? I have. And they paid the price of how I reacted to these situations. God never promised a life that's without trouble. He said, you will have it. You will have to endure it. But just focus on me. So let us not let these events, these ways of responding to the difficult situations the same way. But rather, look at it in a positive way. When we view our trials through our own eyes, we see the past defeating us, the present being unsatisfying, and the future dreadful. However, if we wake up tomorrow with our eyes fixed on God and seeing it His way, this is what we will see. A bright new day of possibilities. And this is a song that brought the inspiration for this lesson. We will see wonder and the opportunities of life. It says, have you ever seen the wonder in the glimmer of first sight, as the eyes begin to open and the blindness meets the light? Have you ever seen the wonder in the air of second life, having come out of the waters with the old one left behind? If you have, so say, I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in life, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I see the world in grace, I see the world in gospel, I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. I'm walking in the wonder. You're the wonder in the wow, turning wilderness to wonder. I see the world is love. I see the world in freedom. I see the Jesus way. You're the wonder in the wow. I see the world your way, and I'm not afraid to follow. I see the world your way, and I'm not ashamed to say. So, I see the Jesus way, and I'm walking in the light. So we've seen three ways of how we view the world from our perspective. So what's the right and proper way? By seeing in God's way, don't. So this next story comes from a testimony that comes from our sister. And I hope what she has to share will give you inspiration. To see it in God's way, God's perspective. Now, it's not to say that she handled everything perfectly, but she learned to view it. If we view it in God's way, we will overcome.
Hi, it's Vicki Watson, and I just wanted to share a little bit about my story with cancer. I was 39 years old. I was feeling good. I was looking forward to a new decade. And I went in for a routine mammogram, and it turned out not to be very routine. It turned out to be an early but an aggressive form of breast cancer. So the determination was to have a radical mastectomy and to have 4 rounds of chemotherapy. I can definitely say it was very shocking to hear the words, "You have cancer," especially at such a young age. But it was very hard to go through the surgeries. It was hard to go through the chemotherapy. But the strongest memory I have is late at night when the house was quiet and just thinking to myself, God, are you going to take care of me? It was a test of faith that I wasn't sure that I was going to pass. But through that experience, I saw the grace of God just poured out in all kinds of big and small ways. I had exceptionally good and caring doctors. I had a wonderful, loving family and supportive friends. I had a friend that threw me a hat party. I had one that came and cleaned my house. And there was a singing class on Wednesday night that I'm so thankful for. It was a small thing, but just to go in there and sing praises to God every week was such a blessing and really ministered to me. And so over the course of that time, I saw how God really did take care of me through my family and through all the good things that He showed me. He helped me, He strengthened me, and He graciously healed me. Well, 5 years later, Rick and I had moved to Hurst, and I was in a new city without a church home yet, and we didn't know anyone. I had gone to a doctor's appointment before we left to move to Hurst, and had a routine test. Didn't think much about it. My doctor had said that it was probably nothing to worry about. Well, I'd gotten a new job, and I came home one night after working in my first week on the job, and Rick was sitting in a chair, and he had a very serious look on his face, and he said, the doctor called and the test came back, and you have colon cancer, and they want to do surgery as soon as possible. Well, that definitely wasn't what I was expecting. but we did have the surgery, and it went well. And then they decided that it was stage 3 colon cancer, and that I needed 6 months of weekly chemotherapy. So really that turned out to be the hardest thing, because I didn't know anybody, I didn't have a church home, and Rick was working a new sales job that required a lot of time, a lot of travel. And so I found myself really relying on the Lord like I really had never had to. And I remember going to each chemo appointment, and I would just say to myself, every step, you are with me. Every step, you are with me. Every step, you are with me. And I relied on Him to get me through that. And at the end of the 6 months, I found myself done with chemo, but also really depressed. I had asked my doctor, what do you think the chances are now in prognosis? And he said they're probably about 50-50. But if you do make it to the 5-year mark, colon cancer is considered cured. Well, 5 years sounded like a long time, and I was pretty down. But God put into my hands a little book called The Purpose-Driven Life. And I turned to that first chapter, and the first line of it was, "It's not about you." Oh, what relief that was. Hallelujah, because I was a mess. But that's really what I needed to hear, that it was really about God. And at that point, I made just a purposeful decision in my mind that whatever time I had, I was going to let Him lead it. I was going to give it to Him. And I learned so much through that experience. And I saw once again that God is faithful. He helped me, He strengthened me, and He graciously healed me. Cancer has been a strange but a good friend, because I have learned so much from it. It taught me about my own flaws and my own weaknesses. It taught me about the importance of living for things that matter, that we really don't know what tomorrow holds, and that we are not promised tomorrow, but we have that choice every day to live for things that matter. And it taught me about God's grace, that it really does cover us every day, that every day we know that God will give us what we need to get through that day. But most of all, it just taught me how faithful God is, that wherever we are, whatever we're going through, that He is with us, that He will get us through, that every step, that we know that He goes ahead of us. So whatever you're going through, I just want you to know that He is with you, that He will walk with you, and that He will strengthen you, that He will help you, and that He will show you about Himself and about yourself, and it will be good lessons that you can learn just as I did. So thank you for letting me share.
Seeing the world Shaddai's way. The three observation that I got out from this and that Vicki pointed out was this: God is gracious. Al Shaddai is with you every step. He is faithful. God is gracious. Seeing His grace in all of our life experiences, that's what we have to do. When we look at from His perspective, this is what we will see. When we go back to the children of Israel, when they were cornered in, surrounded by the seas and the mountains and the army, thinking no way out. But see, if they had seen from God's perspective, this is what He would have shown them. The path that you were on were leading you to the Philistines. You were not equipped or ready to handle that battle. So, I need you to go this other route so that I can show the people of this land my power. So that I can create fear in them when you approach it. Even though they felt like they were trapped, cornered in, it wasn't them that were trapped. It was the Egyptians that were being trapped. God was luring them in as He lures the things that are harmful to us in our life. Leads them through the Red Sea. And as they look back, guess what God did? He destroyed their enemies. See, if they had known that, this is what they would have seen. That the enemies of the past would have been defeated. There's no fear in God. Only power, love, and deliverance. It's the same for us today. When our past continues to pursue us and we think that we're not good enough, that we made too many mistakes for God to love us, and to deliver us from this trial, we just have to remember to not look back. God told them to look forward, didn't He? When we look back, we will be defeated. But if we look forward and remember to open our eyes and see it His way, then we will see His plan to defeat our enemies. Don't let your past, don't let my past, don't let our past mistakes haunt us and prevent us from trusting God. He forgives. He forgives. That's how much grace and mercy He has for us. El Shaddai is with you every step of the way. If we see it from His point of view, this is what we will see and understand, that we are not walking this life alone. He has His hand in hand, walking with us, if we just see that. You know, what more assurance as Christians can we have by what Vicki just told us? That He walks with us every step of the way. When we came out of that water and put on Christ, we became His sons and His daughters. We matter. He knows our name. He knows your name. We are now in His embrace, covered by His wings, walking hand in hand in the wilderness that we call life. El Shaddai, the God of the wilderness. Leave the past behind. Don't wish for those days again. Even if we think that it's better than today. Focus on God and the wonder of His provision this day, this moment. Learn to be content with the blessings that He's given us and to be grateful. When we're troubled, kneel before Him and pray and thank Him and focus on those blessings. And finally, the third observation from this story is that He is faithful. There's so many examples in my life, in your life. If we just stop reacting to our troubles and see it through His eyes and take a deep breath, we will be able to see those blessings. And we will realize that He has been faithful. See, if our forefathers, when they were there at the entrance to the Promised Land, would have remembered that. As they walked from Egypt, remember back the 10 plagues, how He punished the captors to release them, how the pillar of fire and the clouds cared for them through their journey, how He fed them, how He protected them, how He nourished them, how He defeated their enemies. He was and has been faithful and always will be. So no matter the obstacle that we encounter in this life, and how many obstacles that they were to encounter, God would be with them every moment, in every situation, helping to overcome all of the giants and the stone walls. If they saw it through his eyes, they would have known all these obstacles in front was nothing. Because those people, if you read the stories, when they went into the land, they heard about the God of Israel, the God of Jacob, how mighty and powerful he was. And many cities were overtaken without a single shot made. So with that in mind, the children of Israel would have been able to see the wonder of their new life. The land flowing with milk and honey, the grapes, the pomegranates, the figs, and so much more. And same with us. See through his eyes, we will see our blessings. We will see the strength that lies within him to get us through these dark and challenging days. When we open our eyes to his way of seeing the world, our eyes will see light, wonder, life, living color, grace, gospel, love, freedom, confidence. That's what God provides. We will see the Shaddai. We will see the God of the wilderness in our life, in everything. So in conclusion, I want to leave a couple of scriptures with you as we do leave this morning. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. It says, "Therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Psalms 91 and verse 15. Before we read that, I forgot to bring this up. The scripture in the morning that was on the handout, on verse 1, it says, "You who sit down in the high presence, in the high God's presence, spend the night in Shaddai's shadow. Say this, God, you're my refuge." And if we kneel and pray, he shall call upon him. It says here, "He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him." He will throw you a party, in essence. So don't be fearful when we encounter trouble. Kneel before him. Pray. Meditate upon his word, and he will deliver you.